I did not expect to be back this quickly, but some people asked, and I knew that potential was present. It was 5 years ago, literally at this moment, that I walked into a meeting of our presidents and chancellors to be told that I was going to be the 8th commissioner of the Southeastern Conference. And we have had a lot that's happened in those 5 years, a lot that's great, lots that's been difficult. That's the role when you step into a leadership position. But I've not had a situation as difficult and emotional as this one. To make a recommendation to our presidents and chancellors that we cancel the remainder of our men's basketball tournament was a moment where I had to stop and actually catch myself and recompose myself. I tell you that simply to say there is no one in this conference who's taken these decisions lightly. And I would not want to work with another set of presidents, chancellors, and athletics directors in the world. I have the utmost of respect for each of our campus leaders and thank them for their engagement, their work, their consideration, their discussion, and support during the past 24 hours. I also want to say to our coaches, I've not been able to reach each of our 14 men's basketball coaches. When we made the decision, we had some succeeding decisions to be made. So first was the cancellation of the remainder of the SEC men's basketball tournament, which then raises the question of what do you do with regular season competition. All regular season competition involving SEC teams, with one exception I'll speak of, has been suspended through March 30th. That one exception is NCAA championship events that may be conducted, which will be subject to NCAA authority from a participation standpoint and institutional decision making. Practically, we have teams in Albuquerque at the Indoor Track and Field National Championship. The NCAA has adjusted their format or their support, the access around that, created what I've learned is called community space among people, and we're not going to interfere with those out there. There's a swimming and diving national championship coming, gymnastics nationally. We'll see the status of those, in addition to the men's and women's basketball tournaments that the NCAA sponsors. For us, it means we're not playing basketball in Nashville the remainder of the week. Part of the hurt here is the city's been through a lot in the last couple of weeks. I don't have a Nashville Strong t-shirt. I will, because we're a part of this community through our events, through our annual presence, our media days that are coming, our basketball tournaments that are here annually, well into the 30s. We have a special relationship here, and I want to say to the mayor, to the people of this great city, to the Predators, the Sports Foundation, the Convention and Visitor Bureau, how much we appreciate them. And there is sorrow in our heart, too, for having to adjust. To our fans, I know there will be a great deal of frustration. There was last night, a lot of bewilderment. We have a public health situation in this country and across the globe that is emerging. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not a researcher in immunology or infectious disease, but those who are engaged at the NCAA level provided some stark information yesterday that guided the NCAA to close its tournament to public attendance. That then guided us. Literally, as I walked up here last night, the NBA stopped the game and had a player diagnosed with coronavirus. I had a text exchange a few moments ago with Billy Donovan, who was the first face I saw in that story, and he's a friend. And as you were asking me, going through my mind is I have a responsibility to care for people, both our staff, our student athletes, our coaches, and our fans, and we made the best decisions possible at the time, but information has developed. We also had questions from people this morning about, wow, I have to get on a bus and I'm a tennis student athlete. I'm not comfortable doing that. I think our student athletes in men's basketball saw what happened in the in the NBA, and they look to that, many of them, as the next step in their basketball opportunity, and it just creates questions. So this was the appropriate decision made at the best possible time, even though a difficult time, and it affects our basketball tournament here, and as I said, other spring sports at our busiest time of the year through March 30th. A number of you will ask about return to play. We have work to do there. I don't have all of those answers, and I think I tell my staff I don't know is a perfectly good answer from time to time, but it can't just be I don't know. You're going to have to do the work to engage and learn how to answer the question eventually. So we've created an interim period where we will work with our campuses to determine how we return to our normal operation. It may not be March 30th. It may be beyond. But that remains to be seen, but we've identified a time frame where we can engage in conversation and in decision making. Pretty quickly, we've talked about recruiting issues, spring practice. I don't have all the answers. There's a rather famous practice. We're talking about practice press conference. I don't want that necessarily to be me. So what we said is, at the president's chancellor's level, we'll delegate authority to our athletics directors to make some of these operational decisions, and that conversation has continued since I departed the room. We're not all at destinations at this time. We may not govern every one of those elements. In fact, the NCAA may need to engage and quickly govern some of those elements. I've sent a text to Mark Emmert suggesting the NCAA should engage in on and off campus recruiting policies and changes and candidly restrictions for a period of time while we're all dealing with this. That would set everyone on an even plane rather quickly. With that set of introductory comments, I'll do my best to answer questions.
All right, if you'll raise your hand, we'll get a floor mic to you. Jill, let's start right down here in the center towards the front.
Commissioner, I'm sure this will be part of the review between now and March 30th, but some of the spring sport championships that are fixed date, fixed location championships, would there be any possibility of those dates pushing back at all, or will it just be truncated season?
We have our gymnastics championship and equestrian championships will not happen. So those two are canceled. Again, those are difficult decisions, and we're part of the decision here. We have a March 30th date. The remainder of our spring sport championships are after that date. So when we go to golf, tennis, which are the next sets of sports that are up, we'll have an opportunity to evaluate and answer that question later. The same for baseball, outdoor track, and softball, outdoor track, and baseball in that sequence. I had a question about Destin already too. We haven't altered that plan right now.
Question in the middle on the left over here.
Adam Sparks of Tennessee. And Greg, you said there was stark information that you were given by the NCAA. Can you expound on that? Was that just medical information? What exactly was that information?
I don't have all of that detail, Adam. We have a representative on the NCAA Board of Governors. It's Dr. Eli Capilouto. They had a call that was called suddenly yesterday afternoon, as I understand. And in my debrief with him, just the overview of that information, what was being shared. There are 6 medical doctors on the COVID-19 advisory panel. There's another individual who works in international event security and management, and that a set of former and current student athletes. They shared information. I don't have all of those details, but it was about spread, about the need to interrupt the potential spread, and the role of college athletics and big events in engaging and stopping that potential spread.
Right side in the back.
Greg, have you given any thought to extending eligibility for seniors who've been affected by this, whether it's this winter sports or spring sports or whatever?
Not at this point. That would be one of those issues on a long list of additional items to consider, and I don't think we have to come to that conclusion right now.
Okay, we got 2 in the front here, center aisle. All right, you go ahead.
Greg, I know that a lot's been going on, but what kind of discussions have you had with your football coaches about their spring practices? I understand it's up to them right now, but spring games, what discussions have happened there?
I was on a conference call with one of our athletics departments where that was asked. Our athletics directors talked about that afterwards. So we've limited the size, clearly, of on-campus events, and campuses are doing that individually. But I don't have a prescriptive list right now around what's going to happen with spring practice, spring football.
Question in the middle.
Greg, you sort of already answered this, but how much was it a factor of player possibly infecting another player here in the tournament?
That had been, that had been on our mind for a number of days and weeks. We felt with what we knew at that time that we could still move forward. When you're about to walk up here, you look at your phone and you have a text message, and then you see a story with an NBA coach, Billy, who we all know from his work here, and the decision in that story that the NBA has suspended play. after a test. Are you going to be proactive or reactive? And we felt right now, given what's happening, we needed to be proactive at this point.
Question on the left side, go ahead.
Commissioner, SEC baseball tournament is going to be in a couple of months. Any changes of dates, or still don't mention about that?
We don't have any changes right now. That March 30th date gives us an opportunity to take a step back from a rather intense 24, 36 hours and consider the direction with the remainder of the spring as scheduled or any adjustments. Right now, that March 30 date has the most importance, I think, is a milestone.
The games are going to be later dates?
We'll see.
Question center aisle.
And pending whatever kind of decision the NCAA makes about its tournament, would you allow your schools to go to the tournament in light of the information that you have?
Part of what we've discussed is that, subject to NCAA authority and institutional decision making, if the NCAA continues with events, our teams will be able to participate in those championships. Knowing that the NCAA is digging deeply into these issues, should those events continue, we think that's the appropriate approach. Very different than on campus or neutral site or traveling under regular season competition. But I think that our national office has some work to do on each of those elements.
Question on the left, go ahead.
Greg, did you get a sense this morning that coaches, players, those who were in Nashville maybe didn't want to play even with, playing for the automatic bid and that sort of thing?
Not that directly. I was here on Tuesday evening before a dinner I needed to attend to see the teams practicing, and it was Ole Miss at Kermit and Tom and his team with Georgia. And I asked both coaches, are your teams focused and ready to play? And absolutely was the answer. And I took that as what we'd expect. And yesterday, I think people were focused. I had a question a week ago from a coach about should we do this, but not necessarily predicting this outcome. If you'll allow me a moment, I'm going to tell you a story about 2008 that is one of my favorite images. And we had a tornado that hit the Georgia Dome. Many of you were there and can probably recall where you were sitting. None of us slept the night. Mark Womack was leading. Mike Sly was on the basketball committee, so he was sequestered in Indianapolis at that time. I was doing what I did at that point. We moved to Georgia Tech. We had a doubleheader for one team. Georgia-Kentucky played. Georgia won. Georgia won again, and then Georgia won the championship. And there was a student athlete on that team walking down the hallway carrying our championship trophy saying, "This is the best day of my life." I have felt a responsibility to give another team that opportunity. But the greater responsibility is the health and the information that's come about. That's to say this is important, and I think our teams are focused on accessing that opportunity. In talking quickly now with our coaches, what I've heard is those guys look at the NBA. And when that happens at the NBA level, they're saying, you want me to post up and guard closely and do these sorts of things. And so I think that thought, that kind of question in their minds was developing. That's my sense from some of the coaches with whom I've spoken. I have not even talked to half, but that's now been there in a different way. And thank you for indulging me with my story, but it's, you do a lot of work. A lot of it's never seen. A lot of it's questioned. We have staff over there who are filled with questions like you, and those types of moments are motivation.
Question back down the middle.
Yeah, Greg, speaking of being proactive rather than reactive, there's a lot of momentum with events being canceled, and I'm wondering what sense you have about the NCAA tournament, whether it's going to be played.
Yeah, they have a tough road ahead in decision making. I think any of you can judge reactively or proactively. We played last night, and then you reacted. We make the best decisions possible with the best available information, and the NCAA leadership is going to have to make that. And I won't judge right now. what the outcome may be. You know, there's a pause. They've got some time, candidly, that I did not have today. And I would encourage them to use time to fully evaluate, be thoughtful, and determine whether or not we might be able to go forward with any of the NCAA championships in this relatively short window. So you have wrestling. Missouri has the sport of wrestling. I haven't checked their qualifiers. I mentioned indoor track and field. Obviously, basketball is why we're here, both men's and women's. Gymnastics. You know, I heard for all those student athletes, and, you know, we say it just means more. You saw a little bit of that in my emotion, but I know the pride that exists in this conference for having the chance to access those national championships is meaningful for our young people.
We've got time for maybe 2 more questions. If you'll raise your hand if anyone has another question. Let's come back down to the front on the right.
Greg, you mentioned, you know, there's no prescriptive list for football, but would you, as an office, or recommend coaches be pulled back, or would there be any sort of discussion about recruiting, avoiding just being out on the road right now?
I'll go larger. There's no list for any of this. I have an undergraduate degree, a master's degree from Syracuse. This was never in one of my master's classes. We have a few law degrees in our offices. I've checked with each of them. Nope, they never had this one in their law school classes. So that's reality. We're learning. We're making the best decisions on the best available information. We did have conversations about recruiting I referenced, and have stopped off-campus and on-campus recruiting for a period of time. That could be extended. I've identified, I think the NCAA needs to fully engage on that issue as well. The practice issue may be for them nationally. I think we had some conversations. I don't know that we came to a destination, and so that means it's still on that list that we're creating.
Take the last question right down on the front on the right.
Greg, we saw last night with the decision to keep fans out, and then this morning with cancellations around the country, it's kind of a chain reaction from conference to conference. How much were the decisions here at the SEC done in consultation with other commissioners like yourself from other leagues and the NCAA?
I'll give just a commendation to my colleagues among what are called the autonomy conferences, to Larry, to Bob. Kevin's brand new. He walked into this. It's 2 months. You know, Jim lives down the street. He picked the perfect time to retire, it appears, for this one. And to John as well. And we do talk. We obviously have common issues to talk about on a regular basis, but our communication has accelerated. We've all made independent decisions, but as I talk about best available decision based upon best available information, that collaboration helps provide better and the best available information. And so we all had to go back to our own boards and act independently, and we did that. We could have made a different decision, but I think, you know, somebody asked me the timing last night. We knew at 5:45 Central that we were going to adjust our attendance for the following day, and today I think we had a call at 10:30 this morning knowing that we had a noon tip-off and we needed to move quickly to make this decision today. And that was our independent decision, but the ability to collaborate is the kind of work that leaders should do at this level.